This is the California State Budget Season 2012-2013. That's the year we're fighting for, and we fought the good fight. But despite the legislature lowering the cuts of childcare from $500 million to $50 million, the governor further reduced it with his final veto cuts, and we needed to know why. So here's our meeting with his staff at the governor's office.
And then as the economy begins to recover slowly, as we get more jobs, as the tax revenues come back, that we can provide stability and then build on the programs that work. And so, you know, CalWORKs went through a lot of discussion this year, and we are fundamentally changing the CalWORKs program over, you know, a series of years. But you know, we're taking hundreds of millions of dollars out of that program, and it is a painful thing, and it is something that nobody wants to do. And but for the inability to get revenues, we wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, we all know that, you know, most of the CalWORKs clients are children, so that also affected them. And I think education should be a priority for government. That's why we're supporting it. And
I think, you know, what I really wanted to know was what happened between the day that the agreement was made between the governor and the Democrats, the leadership on the Democrats, and the day where only 10,000 slots were going to be lost, and then a few days later, you know, he turned around and said, no, you know, we need to do deeper cuts, and 26,000 slots are being lost. Like, is this something that we should, because we really didn't expect. We thought, you know, he's a Democrat, he was negotiating with the Democrats, so we were celebrating, you know, that they got into an agreement, and then he turned around and didn't follow through with the agreement. So,
well, okay, let me clarify that for you, and also that that there was Prop 98 money put into the preschool program to increase the number of slots as well for 3- and 4-year-olds. So there were 44,000 slots added on that side.
Based on creating parent fees, by charging parents.
No, the parent fees amount to $3 million, which does not support 44,000 slots. You know, that money is going to be used from Prop 98, because you'll remember last year, or it was 2 years ago, that we pulled it out of Prop 98. We put a portion of it back in, so that Prop 98 dollars are going to fund I think it's over $100 million is going to fund additional slots for 3- to 4-year-olds. So it's not, I mean, you know, there was an addition as well as the subtraction. In terms of what happened with this so-called deal, the legislature does pretty much as it can to get as far as it can to close the deficit. They did not get as far as they needed to. And that is something that they chose not to do. So in terms of an agreement, it wasn't that the agreement was abrogated or broken. It was that at a certain point in time, the legislature says, we are close enough, and the governor has the power of the line item veto to make additional cuts. So they decided that they were done making the cuts, and that was all they were comfortable with taking ownership of, and they were close enough to the number. So then they give the budget to the governor, and we still have holes to fill. But it's not so many holes that the governor is going to veto the entire budget. It is close enough, but that the governor needs to make sure that it's in balance. And in terms of the fact that we diverted Prop 98 revenues to child care, I think it was $163 million total, compared to what was originally proposed in January, which was more of a $450 million cut. That the actual cut did turn out to be a lot less, and then we backfilled some Prop 98 dollars to get us closer to balancing the revenues. So we pulled part of it back into Prop 98. And so I understand why to the public it looks like the governor had an agreement and then he broke it. But I would not agree with that characterization. The legislature gets as close as they can, as much as they're comfortable with, and for some things they have to just say it's his discretion about what else he's going to pick and choose from his line item veto authority to finish the job. That's how I would characterize it.
Yeah, the legislature also brought the rainy day fund down a little bit, and then the governor brought it back up. And so that was a decision that the governor made that could have prevented these additional cuts. And, you know,
Right.
80 million, so instead of a rainy day fund at 986, whatever it ended up at, it could have been 900 million and not taken the
Also, they
childcare.
prefer.
So it's sort of, I mean, again, it's just hard for us to really grasp why it was more important to have that money there than ensuring that a child like Xavier could go to preschool on August 31st or whatever it may be.
Well, I think that that's an absolute fair question, and I think that the folks at the Department of Finance and some of the governor's key advisors, it's about a bigger picture. Within each program, you can ask that question: why can't we put more money in here? Why can't we put more money in there? It's just 20 million. It's just 40 million, and those are absolutely fair questions. But in terms of the bigger picture about what the administration is trying to contend with in terms of rating agencies, I don't know if you followed the conversation when Senator Steinberg first said, well, we want a lower reserve, and one rating agency immediately came out with, well, we're not, we think that's a terrible idea. And that, I don't know, I can't remember if they threatened to lower the state's rating agency.
Yeah, we did an action on that after that.
It seemed like that's what they did. And so this all plays into the public's perception, into whether we can get revenues or not, whether we can get voters to understand that we have done the most we can in streamlining these programs and that we don't have government waste. I don't know if you read comments on stories sometimes, but I read the comments on stories sometimes, and they seem to hate state workers, they seem to distrust politicians, and they seem to have just a lot of cynicism about any dollar that is spent on public services, and it's an incredibly hard perception to overcome.
Yeah.
And so
I'm saying the same thing.
when you have rating agencies saying that that is a bad move, it's something that the fiscal advisors take very seriously about how far can we go on this reserve without people saying this is irresponsible. And so I would just offer that back. It is not because it's a devaluation of these programs. It's a reaction to a fear that the public perception is going to be that the governor and the legislature have acted irresponsibly, and we're not going to put our faith in them. We're not going to vote for this initiative. We're not going to support increased revenues. So I want to put that out there as no one devalues these programs. It is, though, a difficult sort of balance to try to balance the public perception and even the media perception about it versus kind of a statewide effort that costs money that we don't have. I mean, I respect what you're saying in terms of really kind of showcasing the value of it, and that's a lot easier to do with single projects than a
So
statewide
can we collaborate on a
system.
single project? Because we take that too. Let's make an example of a early childhood education center or something, and then maybe that will get the message across that this is important.
I think I would never tell anybody not to do more advocacy
Yeah.
because obviously it's powerful. But I will say, just given the size of the magnitude of the deficit amongst many years, and the governor's not only desire but really promise to put the state's fiscal house in order. I mean, programs were going to be cut because there was no way we could balance the budget, and he wasn't going to do gimmicky things. I mean, he sort of pledged that he would not do gimmicky things. So, you had the situation. If the revenues had actually materialized and not gone completely south, we would have had a far different budget. So I do want to stress, that yes, advocacy works and it's important, but I also want to stress that the sheer circumstances, it's difficult to overcome a $16 billion budget deficit in a single year. It just is, for any program, for any group. I mean, you know, do we do it at the expense of the elderly? Do we do it at the expense of the developmentally disabled? Do we do it at the expense of, you know, regular K through 12 education? Do we, you know, nobody wants to make that choice. That's the hard part of
But
it.
the other folks on the other side of that equation of the disabled and the children and the seniors are the corporations and tax breaks and
I would not.
you don't think that could be an option of where you can find funding to starve off some of the budget deficit? It can only come from the most vulnerable?
No, but, you know, until we get a different makeup in the legislature, that's not gonna happen. That's reality, is that you have Republicans who are not part of the majority, but they have enough representation in both houses to make it impossible. They would not even consent to letting voters decide to do it. So it's not, no, that would not be the first stop, is to take it out of programs. But the reality, for an entire year, he courted Republican members of both the Senate and the Assembly to try to get a total of 4 votes and wasn't able to do it. So there's just a reality component. Maybe that changes with the next election. You have open primary. You have different forces at play that might make a different picture for the 2/3 necessary to raise revenues.
Dear to him.
Did I say near and dear?
It's just financial advice.
Advisors, they seem to be having a pretty good impact. Are they advising the governor on the economic engine of these programs and how a dollar spent on child care generates $2 the very next year and saves the state $7 in the long run? And to take child care out for a mother like Daniela, who's making $30,000 a year, which I was in the same situation just a couple of years ago, saving $1,200 a month on child care because of the subsidy. I was earning $36,000 a year, paying, you know, maximum standard rate for rent, buying clothes, eating at restaurants, going to the movies. I mean, I was investing in my community. To take child care away from me and people like Daniela, that just totally cripples us. We can't pay the same amount of rent, we're not paying the same amount of taxes, we're not putting the money back into the economy. Child cares, daycare centers are closing down because the provider's not getting that money, she's not putting it back into the economy with supplies and meals and diapers and whatever. So it makes economic sense to invest in money into child care because it stimulates the economy. So I'm wondering, who are these advisors and what are they advising, and how can we present an argument that this is a good investment? And one of his campaign slogans is, let's get California working. What he's doing is preventing people from going to work. I mean, how can Clarissa go to work when she doesn't have childcare? What is she going to do with disabled?
That part of that argument prevailed and why the $450 million proposal in January did not stick. I think that just the tremendous outcry, as well as understanding that child care helps support jobs, was very persuasive to a wide variety of people, including those in the administration.
Okay.
So it's not a point lost. In terms of economic stimulation, it's not something that people do not consider. And it's something that you can argue about every dollar that we cut, whether it's CalWorks or childcare, or, you know, hospitals will tell us that all the money that we took from them now is going to make it harder for them to treat the uninsured, and so all of the cuts have negative impacts. I mean, we're not we are not blind to that. And I know that your reaction will be, if you're not blind to them, then how could you make them? But again,